SInema. This is absolutely fascinating. SInema, as you know, and as we've discussed on the program, started out as a social worker, then went on to the Arizona State House of Representatives, then on to the Arizona State Senate, and then ran for the U.S. House of Representatives in 2012. And when she did, a commercial, the guy who was running against her, Vernon Parker, ran this incredible commercial against her. Here's a clip from it.
Meet radical left-wing activist Kyrsten SInema. Just how radical is she? Leaders in the Democratic Party describe SInema as too extreme for Central Phoenix. SInema described herself as a socialist and anarchist. SInema has consistently stood in opposition to our armed forces. She protested American military attacks in response to 9/11, advocated for world disarmament, and even supports the closing of Luke Air Force Base, putting thousands of people out of work. Wait, there's more. SInema promoted an anti-Israel activist who raised funds for Hamas and opposes the existence of Israel. She also launched an attack against stay-at-home moms, calling them leeches. And perhaps the weirdest of all, SInema participated in pagan rituals, singing and spiraling during an anti-war protest. Kyrsten SInema is not a garden variety liberal Democrat. It's far, far worse. Kyrsten SInema is a radical left-wing activist who promoted hatred toward our country, our allies, and our families. We can't let her anywhere near Congress.
Imagine if you're running for Congress and somebody's running an ad like that saying that you hate American families, you hate American values, you're trashing the country, you're a hippie, you engage in pagan ritual. At that point, what do? Well, Citizens United, as I said, Citizens United opened the door for this. And, for a person to say, well, okay, I'm going to win the next time, but I'm going to do it, the way that is now kind of the official law of the United States. I'm going to do it with money from giant corporations and right-wing billionaires. And, Citizens United, of course, doubled down on corporate personhood. And John Paul Stevens says all general business corporation statutes appear to date from well after 1800. In other words, there were no corporations in the modern form when the Constitution was written. But nonetheless, he said the framers thus took it as a given that corporations would be comprehensively regulated in the service of the public welfare. Unlike our conservative colleagues on the bench, he said, actually, he just said, unlike our colleagues, the founders, had little trouble distinguishing corporations from human beings. And when they constitutionalized the right to free speech in the First Amendment, it was the free speech of individual Americans they had in mind. The fact that corporations are different from human beings, Stevens wrote in his dissent in Citizens United, might seem to need no elaboration, except that the majority opinion almost completely elides it, or ignores it, or sets it aside. Unlike natural persons, corporations have limited liability, perpetual life, favorable treatment and accumulation of assets. Unlike voters in U.S. elections, corporations may be foreign controlled. And he goes on and on through this. And then he says, the biggest problem of the fact that in 2010, officially by law, because of the Supreme Court, it became legal for billionaires and right-wing corporations to buy politicians like Kyrsten SInema. He says, in addition to the immediate drowning out of non-corporate voices, there may be deleterious effects that follow soon thereafter. And here we are, 11 years out. Tell me that he wasn't prescient. It's like this guy had a time machine. He died in 2019, so you can't ask him now. But how did you know, Justice Stevens? He says, corporate domination of electioneering. This is from the Citizens United dissent. You can read it over at the Supreme Court website. Corporate domination of electioneering can generate the impression that corporations dominate our democracy. When citizens turn on their televisions and radios before an election and hear only corporate electioneering, they may lose faith in their capacity as citizens to influence public policy. A government captured by corporate interests, they may come to believe, will be neither responsive to their needs nor willing to give their views a fair hearing. Gee, are we there yet? I mean, it's like, look at everything that's in the Build Back Better bill. 70% of people in Arizona want that, but not Kyrsten SInema because she's taking money from these giant corporations. So again, back to Justice John Paul Stevens in his dissent in Citizens United in 2010, quote, the predictable result is cynicism and disenchantment. an increased perception that large spenders call the tune, and a reduced willingness of voters to take part in democratic governance. To the extent that corporations are allowed to exert undue influence in electoral races, the speech of the eventual winners of those races, keep in mind Kyrsten SInema in 2012, a liberal running for Congress, the speech of the eventual winners of those races may also be chilled. And then he goes on to say, on a variety of levels, unregulated corporate electioneering might diminish the ability of citizens to hold officials accountable to the people. Gee, are we seeing that right now? And disserve the goal of a public debate that is uninhibited, robust, and wide open. In my mind, the only way to deal with this is to blow up Citizens United. And the Citizens United part of politics was blown up by the For the People Act, H.R. 1. But, as long as the filibuster's in place, there's no possibility that's going to pass. And even if the filibuster was removed, in all probability, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten SInema would vote against it. Although you never know. I mean, it would help them, if they remain Democrats, it would help them moving forward.